The Mobile County Public School System presents Homeroom with Nancy Pierce.
Hello and welcome to Homeroom. I'm Nancy Pierce, Public Relations Supervisor for the Mobile County Public School System. You may remember more than a year ago there was a situation in Midland, Alabama with a bus driver and a child and a man that kidnapped a child from the bus. Well, we certainly don't want anything like that to happen, and our security department really got it going even before the Midland incident to make sure nothing like that would happen with our buses, with any of our children. Joining me today are two people to talk about it. Lorenzo Williams, who is one of our fabulous resource officers. Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
Nancy.
to have
How are
you here. I'm great, thank you. And next to him is Walt Dickerson, and he is the president of Diversified Emergency Management Associates. I used to know you with
Mobile County Emergency Management Agency.
Right. So now you've changed.
Glad to be here.
Good to have you with us. Yes, indeed. So let's go back to when this all started.
Well, it all started as a spin-up of increasing our security in the schools. Mm-hmm. We had several components that we decided to put together with the collaboration of DEMA, Walt Dickerson. We decided to sit around the table and say, hey, this is what we need to do for the schools to make security better. So it was a big collaboration of thoughts and training that we decided to put together, and we've decided there was one component missing: the buses.
We have a lot of kids that ride buses.
A lot of kids, somewhere in the neighborhood of 35,000.
Yeah, that is a lot. When we have 59,000 students and 35,000 ride buses.
Over half of them, correct.
And we want to make sure they're safe in school, but we want to make sure they're safe on their way to school and on their way home.
That's
so
correct.
This is how it was kicked off.
Exactly.
How did you get involved?
Well, after sitting around and talking with the school system, with the security, Mr. Duffy and also Lorenzo, then we did a vulnerability risk assessment. You have to do that. And then from that...
how do you do that before we go on? How do you do a vulnerability risk assessment?
Well, you find out what's right about what was going good, and you find out what is not right, what needs improvement, and that's what we did. We came back to the security department with a report on what we saw, what we found, and you have to communicate with people. It can't be the Seattle, Washington school system. You can't cut and paste it. It has to be the Mobile County school system.
Right.
And that's what we did. Would actually go on day to day. We worked with Pat Mitchell and his transportation department, talked with them. We even talked to the bus drivers and asked them, what if there was a train derailment? What would you do at that particular time? And it just had to have it had hazmat or whatever the case may be. And then from that, we developed a standard operating guide, as you can see here, and we did a draft and turned that over to the school system. And then we sat down and then we validated and make sure we worked out the bugs and things of that nature. And I'll let Lorenzo talk about where we went from there, because we developed a bus crisis response guide.
How before we get into that, how scary is it, do you think, for bus drivers to think about any of these things that would happen?
Talking to the bus drivers that we spoke with, and we tried to touch each section of bus driver, because some of them on the south side of town, the east side of town, so to try to find out what kind of problems or issues that they were concerned about. And we found out one of the biggest things which was on their mind, was the Midland incident.
Right.
And along with other things. So we kind of started there with talking with them about what they would do in a situation like that.
And in Midland, the man had befriended the bus driver, correct?
That's what the reports are showing.
And the other thing, if I can say, Nancy,
Sure.
a bus driver, primary mission to get on that bus, it's another classroom. And when they get on the bus, they're worrying about the kids' safety, driving the bus, traffic, and things of this nature. But what if a fight breaks out? What if a weapon is on the bus? Whatever, before it even get to the actual classroom at the school system. So a lot of things can take place. What happens if there's a tornado in the path of the bus? Those kind of things are what we worked on with the school system.
Wow, I mean, that is amazing. All those things have to go through a bus driver's mind.
Right, they have an awesome job, and a lot of times we look at buses just riding down the road, we see a big yellow bus. Okay,
Right.
I hope it gets out my way.
Yeah.
That type of thing. But when you think of it in retrospect, they're carrying a classroom and a half full of children, which a lot of times it's difficult to control them in a classroom. Imagine that same bunch plus on a bus, driving down the road, sometimes acting unseemly. And those bus drivers have to do their job, keep the bus in the road, drive it safely, and try to maintain order. So we thought about a lot of those things, and as I thought about them, I'm like, my God, I wouldn't want to do it myself. So we sat down with Pat Mitchell, Duffy, Dima, myself, and we just threw some things around the table. I mean, it was kind of heated from time to time.
But that's good. That's the way to get it all straightened out, sure.
Exactly. And we ironed it out, and we came up with kind of a quick reference guide. Say, hey, let's give them something that they can pick up and read and say, hey, if this happens, what can I do? Now, that may not fit the scenario exactly, but it will give them something to shoot for. So that's kind of what we came up with. And we have ongoing training that we're doing continuously with the bus drivers and getting feedback from them on things that are going on the buses.
You know, when you talk about bus drivers, and I want to go back to that, they have an incredible responsibility. And like you said, you see a bus ahead of you and you're thinking, oh, it's going to slow down, it's going to stop, and what am I going to do? And I just want to get around it. But when you think about it, with all those kids on board, and they're oftentimes we say, and this is so true, that the bus driver is the first person that the child sees smile in the morning. Exactly. So you want them to have a good trip from the time they're picked up from their bus stop until they get to school.
Most definitely.
And not all the kids that are on that bus have that thought in mind.
That's true. If you think about it, a lot of the things that go on at school, and we can't be blind to those things, and a lot of the weapons that come to school, 90% of them are transported on the bus. And you've got the bus driver there who's trying to maintain order, drive the bus in a safe manner, and there's a kid on the bus with a gun. Maybe she knows about it, maybe he or she doesn't. So that was another thing that we took into consideration when developing what we developed.
I thought another great thing was that took place beginning of the school year, prior to school starting, the vision of the Mobile County school system, and especially the security department and also the transportation department. Lorenzo did a presentation to all of the bus drivers based on this quick reference response guide. Now, we realize that the bus driver, if something happened, may not be able to take this quick reference, oh, what do I do now? There's a fight. But when they have some idle time, when the bus is not moving, waiting on the children, the students, they can sit and go through that. And that's what Lorenzo and the transportation department was encouraging them to do.
When you talk to the bus drivers, how did they respond to this? Were they happy to have it? Is it just, another thing that they have to deal with? Well, how was that?
They received it quite happily. They were glad to get it. Something to look at, a procedure. Hey, hey, what do we do? Hey, can you tell us how to do this, how to do that? Because a lot of things that was happening, they was winging it. Going basic, as we say, going for what they knew. And so, but wanted to make it standard. A standard playbook for everyone. Right. And so they received it very, very, very graciously.
And I think the other thing it let them know they weren't out there all alone.
Right.
Why they had this back at the central office and the transportation department and security department, this is sort of like the Bible. So when something happens, a part of this is communication, whether radio, cell phones, or whatever the case may be. So that took place also, and I thought that was an excellent thing. As I travel around the country, I'll be honest with you, I have not seen another school system that I've come across that have taken these type of steps to ensure the safety of the students and the bus driver.
And the bus driver. We need to take a break, but I want to talk about the fact that we really are way ahead of other places. So we'll do that when we come back, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.
Nationwide, an average of 24 children die each year.
Okay.
And another 17,000 are injured in bus-related accidents.
Many of these can be prevented. The safety of our children comes first.
For the safety of our future, obey all traffic laws related to school bus safety.
Hi, I'm Pat Mitchell, Director of Transportation for the Mobile County Public School System. We're asking you to obey all bus safety laws. It could save a life. Remember, stop ahead when you see red. Our future depends on it.
For me, it started back in 1942 when my family moved to Mobile, and I began my high school career at Murphy High School. Today, it's so important to be able to ingrain in yourself what are you going to do in future life, and you need to be prepared. And so subsequently, everything at Murphy was very important in my life, and so it was instrumental in preparing me for future life and future profession that I wanted to be in.
So I've come up with a family emergency plan.
Great. What is it?
It's difficult to talk about, so I'm not telling you.
How will we know what to do?
You won't.
I'm so glad I won't have to remember anything.
And me too. Thanks for this, sweetie.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
I'm Nancy Pierce, Public Relations Supervisor for the Mobile County Public School System, and I have two wonderful guys who are with me this morning to talk about bus safety. Lorenzo Wilson, who is one of our security officers, and also Walt Dickerson, who is with DEMA.
DEMA, that's
okay,
correct.
All right. And so we talked about how you all worked diligently with Pat Mitchell from the Transportation Department, and also with Bill Duffy, security, head of security here. You started working on this before Midland, and that, of course, was the incident that happened in Midland, Alabama, where the child was taken off a bus, put in a bunker, etc., and ended up happy for the child. The person who did it was killed. But but you started working on this 4 months before, and you got it worked. What about other states, other cities in Alabama? Did they do this too? Are they working on it now? Does everybody have a bus safety policy, basically?
I think as I travel around, there is a safety plan, but it's nowhere near in depth as this, which I've seen. The other thing is, I should say, and maybe Lorenzo want to talk about it more, another step that you all took in the Mobile County school system, we certified every one of your school plans, your school safety plans, and to make sure it was in conformance with the other directive on the state and local levels and things of this nature. And they all look alike. Now, each schools are different. One school may be by a railroad track, one may not, but one may be by a low-lying area where there's flooding that can happen very easily. But all those plans were certified in conjunction with the security department.
Yeah, I don't think any of us who have not driven a bus or have not ridden a bus with students, et cetera, even realize all the things that could happen with, we talked about, hazardous materials. By a bus, maybe there's a train accident and you have to cross the tracks, and just so many things. Tornado, we certainly are not a tornado state, but it seems like we're becoming more of one, and so we have to think about that. So you had to deal with all of those. Think about all the things that could present trouble to the bus drivers.
Exactly. And to piggyback on what Walt just said, Walt had extensive experience with natural and man-made disasters. So we pulled him in, and we also coordinated with first responders, police department, those at the top, fire department, and all those other agencies, and we got their input on what do you think, if this happened in your jurisdiction, would be a great way to handle it. So we took all those things into account. We didn't just sit around and say, what do you think? No, we got the experts.
Right.
Put them all in, and we put it together. And we talked with the bus driver and said, hey, we've talked with these experts about this. What do you think about this?
What kind of response did the first responders have, the police, the fire department, that you were doing this?
They were glad to help, happy to help, and they want to do more. Sometimes we have to kind of slow them down a little bit because they want to push and go with it. And I understand that, because as a first responder, they're going to be the first ones on the scene. They need to know what's going on. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we geared our training for the bus drivers toward being able to facilitate first responders to help them in a situation.
And the other step in the equation, one thing I've always said, there's two ways you can find out whether your plan works. You can wait around for something that happens, or you can be proactive and go ahead and initiate the appropriate training and also the exercise. And that's sort of what we're talking about now, is taking it to that next phase, is actually doing an exercise or whatever the case may be and doing the training. And not just with the Mobile County school system, but with the fire department, police department, or whatever the case may be. And we'd like to see the bus drivers engaged in this type of scenario as a part of it, in the central office and the transportation department.
Well, there is training for others as far as that. You know, you always see out at USA if there's a disaster, you know, and they've made this up. It isn't something that happened. But what would you do? What would the fire do? And so this is just kind of the same thing, right?
Exactly. But what we realize is that we just don't deal with Mobile. We have other, like Creole, we have Central, other jurisdictions.
Right.
So we have to think about those jurisdictions when we're doing training, because they do things a little different than Mobile Police Department, Mobile Fire Department. So we had to consider those people also. So it was a big undertaking, and we've kind of refined it to where we want it now to fit into the everyday practicality of the bus drivers.
So you think you're going to go ahead with some of these exercises?
Yes, we
I think that's a great idea.
Yes.
A wonderful idea, because like you said, you can think you know what you're going to do, but until it happens, you have no, you know.
Exactly.
So that, I think that's good.
There's a lot of things that we found out in our research. We found out a lot of things about buses, the mechanical side of buses, that we had no idea about. You know, how to as I said, for the bus driver to help facilitate first responder helping them. Say, for instance, there was a hostage situation on the bus. What could that bus driver do to help the SWAT team or police officers?
Right.
So.
And Nancy, you brought up a good point when you said the bus driver see that child first when they first get on the bus. That is so important. The rapport that the bus driver have with the students that's riding the bus. Because if that student have the confidence in that bus driver, if that is built, then the kid may say, or the student may say, I know so-and-so student in seat number 3 has a knife or have a gun or whatever the case may be. And that sort of helps a lot.
Well, a lot of times, and we've talked about this so much, is a lot of times students bring their problems that have happened during the weekend onto the bus, into the classroom.
Good point.
And so, you know, bus drivers have to be aware of all that too.
Right.
And if they get to know their students, then they'll be able to see little differences. You know, this student is not acting the way he or she normally does.
Personality changes, that's exactly right.
So, you know, that can all help with how they would handle this. It's got to be, I bet for a while it was kind of overwhelming. It's like, oh, well, we just have to deal with this and this. But now you think about the hazardous waste, the train derailment, the tornado, whatever is going to happen. So instead of a knife or a gun on a bus, which of course we find very serious, and we take it very seriously.
Exactly.
You now have all these other things that you have to think about. So you've got this incredible quick reference guide for them.
Right.
What sorts of things are in there?
We wanted to keep it basic in a sense, and I know it sounds like it's this involved piece of work, but it's real basic. We talk about what to do if you know there's a student on the bus with a gun. How do you report that? How do you stay covert about that? Do you need to stay covert about it? What are the reporting procedures if a kid came, as Walt mentioned, and said, hey, kid in C3 has a gun. Do you want to stop the bus and try to take it from it? All of these scenarios are built into this quick reference guide that gives them an idea of what they need to do and how to handle that.
We need to take one more break, and we'll be right back to continue with this because it's such an important subject. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
I transferred to Viger High School halfway through my sophomore year, and the curriculum there, the instructors, teachers, the whole thing was just a shock to me. At Viger, you were encouraged to critically think, and so I was just well-grounded to move on into college football and then on into the NFL. Well, for me, Viger High School was the start. It's where I started, and I'm very proud of that.
I'm Ashley Rich, Mobile County District Attorney. The failure to obey school bus safety laws will cost you. It can cost you up to a $3,000 fine and the loss of your driving privileges.
But more than that, it could cost the life of a child. That's why the Mobile County Public School System is urging you to stop and obey all bus traffic laws. Hi, I'm Pat Mitchell, Director of Transportation for the Mobile County Public School System. We're asking you to obey all bus safety laws. It could save a life. Remember, stop ahead when you see red. Our future depends on it.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
Welcome back to Homeroom. I'm Nancy Pierce, Public Relations Supervisor for the Mobile County Public School System, and we are talking bus safety, a very important issue for our children, our students, your children. We want to make sure they're safe at school, on the way to school, and on the way home. And so joining me today for this final part of our interview, I have Lorenzo Williams, who is one of our resource officers, and Walt Dickerson, who I knew through emergency management, and now you're with
my own company, Diversified Emergency Management Associates.
Sometimes I forget these.
That's okay.
But you've had so much experience with emergency management, and that's why you all work together with our security and also our transportation. We're talking about this quick reference guide that the bus drivers have in case something happens.
Correct.
And they will read it ahead of time, so they'll know what to do. Now I know you can't go into specifics because we don't want them to go into specifics.
Right,
no,
that's correct.
You have to keep those to yourself. But what are some of the other issues that bus drivers are going to face that they find in there?
Well, as we said in our last segment, we talked about some of the basic things in the quick reference guide about how to deal with gunmen on the bus, knives on the bus, students on the bus, and how to deal with chemical spills, hurricanes, would be hurricanes, be tornadoes, any of those things that would come up that they wouldn't know anything about beforehand.
Now, what do you do with a tornado? And that's probably not a secret, but I mean, if a tornado is in the area that the bus driver, I mean, what should a bus driver do?
There's a couple scenarios in there, and then what we did with that, we did a do's and don'ts.
Right.
And one thing you do depend on if you're close enough to the school. It's funny you said. I was watching a program on TV the other night, and the bus driver turned around because they could actually see the tornado, and they were only about a minute away from the school, so they were able to go back to the school and get the kids. Sometimes that's not possible. The bus drivers, the other thing that a quick reference guide, if they spot a tornado or it comes over the radio or whatever, they take the safe refuge to shelter. It may be another facility or whatever, and get the kids off of the bus. And that's the things that you have to do.
Right. I mean, how many times do you see a bus in a tornado being taken from here to 2 miles away? Right. So you don't want to stay on the bus.
And when we wrote the quick reference guide and also the standard operating guide, we wrote it from an all hazard approach. And we put the do's and don'ts, in there and things of this nature.
That's great. What else do you cover in there?
We cover some of the things we cover are, as I've mentioned, trying to help the bus drivers facilitate help if they need it from law enforcement. Some of the things that they already know, and we don't really get into the mechanical side of buses because Pat Mitchell and his group provides all that training for them. So they know their bus from front to back. They know all the intricate parts. They know it a lot better than we do, than we ever would. But they didn't know how to use those things to help law enforcement.
I would have no idea.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'll give you one instance. If the bus is stopped and you may, law enforcement may need to get on the bus, and if the doors are locked or whatever, they can always come with some rules and say, hey, it's hot on the bus. I roll the windows down? Can I let the windows down? Any kind of routes they can use to get on the bus to help law enforcement help them.
Right.
Some of those things are covered in the quick reference guide.
Well, that's important.
And I think the other consideration, Nancy, that you have to look at when you do this, there's a point in time, and we're not trying to make a bus driver a Lorenzo and the resource officers, but it's called command and control. That it's like the ship. Who's who's in command. The command of that bus at that certain particular time until help arrive is that bus driver.
Without a doubt.
So their cool, calm, and collectedness and how they handle the situation on the bus, and maybe a student with a gun and whatever the case may be. Some of it is going to be instinct. Others, I think, by them reading this quick reference guide and training and doing an exercise, can help could save someone's life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how can you become cool and collected and calm? And it's with knowing what to do.
Exactly.
It's knowing ahead of time.
Exactly.
Not all of a sudden thinking, okay, what do I have to do? I can't remember, give me my book. Well, you don't have time to look at that.
Exactly.
You need to know ahead of time. You need to have it so that you feel secure. As a bus driver, you feel secure that you know what to do when these things happen.
Exactly.
We want to make sure that the bus drivers know that we're with them.
Mm-hmm.
We're with them 100%. And sometimes they're kind of the forgotten warriors, I guess, if I can use that phrase.
Right.
But they're not. And I realize that they have a task, an everyday task,
right,
that I wouldn't want.
Yeah, very precious cargo.
Exactly. And everyone expects their child to come back home the same
That's
way
right.
he or she left.
Mm-hmm.
And the most hazardous time is between the time he's picked up, taken to school, and
Mm-hmm.
brought back home. You know, they're on the road with a lot of people that are not safe. And a lot of situations that are on the bus are not safe,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but they manage to get them home safely.
Right. Well, like we said, a lot of the kids are bringing problems from the weekend
That's
onto
right.
the bus, and so the bus driver has to deal with that.
Correct.
And you know, I wish they would leave if they're having problems, issues in the community with somebody. Leave it there, or
Exactly.
settle it, talk it out, but don't bring it on the bus, because then you'll also take it into the classroom.
Exactly. Correct.
And we're all here to make sure the kids get a good education and that it's a good learning environment. And that starts when those bus drivers pick up those kids.
That's
is
correct.
get them going,
Exactly.
thinking about, okay, we're going to school and you're going to learn a lot of things today. So it's a heavy load for bus drivers to do.
Absolutely.
Exactly. There are things like we talked about train derailment. There's a hazmat, shelter in place. Where do you park the bus? 300 feet. Make sure it's uphill if it's possible. And if you can't move that bus or whatever, put the windows up and shelter in place like you would do in your home or like you would do in a classroom. Those kind of things. Evacuation of the bus. How can you get certain children on the bus, students engaged to help? And you have to go out the rear emergency door and evacuate the bus. There's a segment on that. So
I'm so glad you've done this, and that we have this in the Mobile County Public School System. And I think you all should be very proud, as we are, that you came together. And it was a long process, a lengthy process, involving a lot of groups, which it needed to do. And now we have it, and the bus drivers are using it. And then you're going to start training with actual, not situations, but situations, I guess we could say made-up situations, but where they really have to try to figure out what
Right.
they do.
We're going to set up scenarios
That's great.
that's going to mimic some of the things that we have referenced in the quick reference guide, and try to produce training from those scenarios that we set up. And we think that training is only good as the training.
Right.
This is no good if we don't train.
That's exactly right. Well, I look forward to hearing more about that later. We're out of time right now. Thank you both, Lorenzo and Walt. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
It's a great program. You're welcome. And thank you for watching and for listening.